Hi everyone, and a massive welcome to a brand new series here on InfoSec Live of the GRC Experience. For those that are new to the channel, my name's Simon Linstead. I'm the founder of the InfoSec Live community and also your host for this show. And by sharing stories and best practice over the last few months, it's now led to 40,000 views and 7,000 hours of our content being watched on YouTube by you, our amazing subscribers. So a huge thank you for your engagement. And if you'd like to support the wider InfoSec Live community, or indeed buy me a cheeky decaf coffee, we do have a few ways that you can show your appreciation. First up, the ability to purchase super stickers in the chat if you'd like your question bumped up to the top. 3 tiers of membership allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. And a brand new swag shop located at the top of our channel where you can now buy branded InfoSec Live merchandise. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. So if you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We try to make these events as interactive as possible, so make sure you also drop any questions in the chat. Just get my breath back, have a quick sip of coffee. Just before I carry on, funny story, or might not be a funny story. Just before I went live, I think Carlos in the green room would have seen me bending down and wondering what I was doing. I thought I had a fire in here I could smell burning, so I'm either having a stroke or if you see smoke coming up, if you can give me a shout, that'd be much appreciated. So today, I'm joined by Carlos Guerrero, and over the last 16 years, Carlos has gone from Master of Fine Arts graduate to a salesperson in the cybersecurity and compliance space. I mean, what a ride. He wasn't a great traditional student in high school. Know the feeling there, Carlos. And it was only taking a pottery class during his senior year that he felt inspired to learn. Next stop for him was art school, where he learned that he really loved building things. And after finishing his BFA, he spent several years traveling the US, going to various artist in residency programs, finally ending up at the University of Nebraska, where he earned a Master of Fine Arts degree in painting. That's when things got really exciting, is when he went to work for a non-profit art centre to help them with their marketing. And that opportunity turned into the chance for him to help the art centre raise money as their fund development director. After leaving the arts centre to start a tech business that ultimately crashed and burned, that was his MBA at the University of Hard Knocks. Again, Carlos, been there too, my friend. And after picking himself back up, he started working for an IT managed services provider in Lincoln, Nebraska, had his first opportunity to build something. He then moved to Tampa, Florida to help that MSP launch the MSP program. And after closing that chapter, he came to work for where he is now, 360 Advanced, who are a cybersecurity audit and compliance firm in St. Pete, Florida. Very excited for this one, folks. Let's bring him on. Carlos, how are you?
I think you're on fire. Is how you mean? Like, is that like a metaphorical fire? Like you're like
no. I stood here before we went live,
yeah,
and I could smell burning, and I know that my plugs under the desk, I would say from a health and safety point of view, are slightly overloaded. So I did give it a quick check, but I think we're okay, and I can't see any smoke. So let me know if you see, smoke billowing up behind me.
We'll let you know.
So Carlos, look, thank you so much for coming on. I've given a little bit of background to the audience. And again, before we jump in any further, I should say a massive thank you to everyone who's in there, because we've got loads and loads of people in here again. We've got Jed, we've got Richard, we've got Phil, we've got, I say Splodge, it's the same person. We've got Salunio, we've got Gregor, my friend. We've also got Alana Boyajian. Great to see you, Alana. Gareth Stacey, who I only spoke to earlier. Olawale is in the house. Really excited about this one. He says, can't wait. Jay Tilson, looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday, my friend, for some dinner in Manchester. and Andrew Bunch. So all of you, thank you so much. It's you guys and LG, Lee Gilbank. It's you guys and girls who make these so special. So please do get your questions ready. But before we do that, I'm just going to ask Carlos to tell us a bit more. One, I want to know why you struggled at school, whether it's for the same reasons I did. So let's
Yeah.
start there. Why was school a struggle?
I think it was some like undiagnosed, like, ADHD or, some sort of, dyslexia, something, right? Like I just had a hard time reading. I think that was the most challenging thing. I found myself at the end of pages, end of books, like not knowing what I just read. And
Yeah.
a quick story of how that all transformed with the whole art thing is when I found myself in um, undergraduate school. The only way I got in was a provisional status. So they said, basically, if you don't have a B average after the first semester, we're going to pack your bags and send you on your way. And so I started sitting in the front of the class and just really worked hard at trying to stay in school.
Do you are you like me? Do you still struggle to concentrate now? Have you learned
I
to
do.
manage it? Have you
I
learned to
do.
manage it differently though?
Yeah. Certain ways I've kind of have systems and ways I trick myself to kind of stay organized. I still don't read novels. I listen to books, right? I listen to
Yeah.
podcasts. I think that's cool. I'm still much more interested in things like biography, self help, things like that, as opposed to fiction and those sort of things. Because I just get lost.
I mean, I've always been a bit of a voracious reader, always reading lots of books. But the thing I'll notice, excuse me, especially with the fiction ones, is that I'll read a whole book, and by the end of it, I haven't really paid attention to anything that's happened. So I
That's
think I either skim read, without knowing I'm doing it. But like you said, audiobooks, I listen to loads of audiobooks. And again, I can get easily distracted. Two things
hmm
can happen. The children can make noise and I won't hear what's happened for a chapter and I'll lose the plot. And what also happens is I'll start listening to it in the evening when I'm sitting in bed and then I'll wake up 7 hours later into the book. So that's the
hmm
only.
All these things have a flip side, right? Like I've been listening to this book. It's called Samson and Goliath, right? It's about underdogs, and so these attributes that may seem negative turn positives. I think like that whole business of not being able to focus and not being able to study and plan in that way, it allowed me or forced me to learn by doing, right? It
Yeah.
just made a whole lot more sense for me to get my hands dirty. And that's kind of the art thing kind of came
And
out of
do
that.
do you do you find when you're getting your hands dirty, whether it's at work or whether it's with your hobby with art, do you find that you hyper focus on that and you can concentrate?
Totally.
Yeah.
Most certainly. In
And
certain
it's
aspects.
it's learning how to then relate that to the job you do, isn't it? Which I think for some of us, me definitely, I struggle with that sometimes, and
Yeah.
I think I can
No.
feel a little bit overwhelmed, especially if I've got a lot to do. I mean, like this
Yep.
week, I had a couple of days off last week because we had a sickness bug go through the house. So
Oh,
when I woke up this morning, I literally didn't know where to start because I just
yep.
had so much. I think what I should try and do is spend the time the night before planning it through so I get my head straight before it gets to the morning, maybe.
Certainly. No, those kind of things help. I always say that, sometimes I look around and there's a cloud of dust, right? Like I've been focused on this one thing or try to pinpoint these one things, but then there's stuff all over the place around me and I have to kind of clean that back up to get going again. But it does tie into, in a way, like this thing that happened to me in grad school that I found was a light bulb moment for me was when I was I was making things. I started off in pottery, then it became painting and sculpture. And at some point, it just clicked. I was like, the medium really, it doesn't matter. You can plug into any medium with this sort of life force, and then that's the art, if you will, or whatever you want to call it. And so that's made it real easy to translate that into, especially business development.
And there's a really tenuous link that I've been building up to here, which is utilizing processes when you have ADHD, which links
Yes,
us really well to GRC, doesn't it?
it really does.
How
Good
about
job.
that? See, everyone was listening, thinking, "What are they talking
You
about?
nailed it.
Is this ever going to get to the point?"
I love it.
I think Alana's made a great point. She said it's great that we're in a space now where we can share the things we struggle with as we try
Oh
to
my
get through the
goodness.
day, less of a stigma. And I think I was seen as the naughty kid at school. I don't know about you, but that was the label I got because I had an inability to concentrate. I used to distract others. Like now, I couldn't stop talking. So I
Sure.
think misunderstood a little bit. Whereas having 6 children myself, my 17-year-old who's passed his driving theory test today, big up Sonny, well done Sonny for doing that. He's a bit on the spectrum, and he's had
Mm.
some support at school, but he caught it a little bit late. So in the earlier years of school, he just got sent out to the naughty corner a lot. But when he got into high school, they did take ownership of it. But then our 4-year-old twins, shows you how much things have changed. Their teacher has already spoken to my wife and I and said that
Amazing.
she thinks she should make a referral, which we completely agree with. So Alana's right. We are in a space now where we can be open and honest about, the things that we struggle with, which is hugely important.
Most certainly, and can be assets, right? Like we said, I mean, how do you end up in cybersecurity or any of these things without necessarily knowing about them, but you can feel them and find them and have different ways of knowing and find different parts to play a role and still make an impact, right? And I think that's the part that is exciting about the world we live in today. You don't have to be, a laser, focused subject matter expert in one particular thing. You can certainly go around, through the back door and still get to the same place and maybe even get further. And I think that's pretty exciting.
I completely agree. So, okay, let's talk about the transition from where you were. I mean, where were you? What were you doing first before you joined 360? You were in
Oh, I was
IT
in
then.
IT managed services. So I
Yeah.
was like very like SMB, like support desk. I helped them build kind of a SOC as a service. I brought on some cybersecurity stuff, but it was IT managed services,
Right. So
outsourced IT.
how did you? I was going to ask you. Yes, Key, another brick in the wall, part two. Exactly that. I was going to ask how the transition went when you came into tech from being outside in kind of the arts environment. I know you were doing business development work.
Yeah.
How did the transition go? Talk to
I
me
don't
about
think
that.
that was the beauty of it. It's like one, I think for me personally, like learning how just spoke about has allowed me to pick up on broad concepts and not need to know every single bit of every single thing in order to have some dialogue about it, okay? And to make, and to put the pieces together. And then just that, sort of exploration and just trying to find the right people to talk to about the right thing, and then at some point you're bringing people together and it's just becomes this thing. And so it's almost like it just happened to be technology, it just happened to be compliance. And I'm glad it is. There's something really unique about this space and really fun
Yeah.
time to be a part of it, but it just kind of happened to be. And I think that's kind of cool.
I mean, we're both quite new in the tech space as
Yes.
such, and I think for me the transition was slightly different because I tried to come in on a technical basis, which I clearly shouldn't have done had I have done what I tell everyone to do now, which is analyze what you're good at first and do a job that you enjoy. But the one thing I
Mhm.
haven't struggled with is relating any of the previous skills I've got. So, for example, like the business development, which we both do, I
Yep.
mean that skill can be transposed from any career and any experiences. And
Yep.
I want to find out from you. Well, one thing I think you do differently. So we got talking, not because you were trying to sell me anything, and not because I was trying to sell you anything, but for the simple reason we were networking. I think I might
Hmm.
have even seen you on one of these shows, and we struck up a conversation. Uh,
Hmm.
that to me is business development. It's also relationship management, and I think I've also spoke to one of your clients who's a CISO who's been on my show who speaks very, very highly of you and 360 Advanced. And
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes as to how you go about engaging with potential new customers, because most of
Yep.
the stuff you hear from CISOs about vendors and MSPs is not so positive, Carlos.
Listen, I mean, so all these skill sets that I'm talking about, if you don't have a solid company or product or whatever it is that you're repping, and by solid, I just mean having people on board that get it, that care, right? Those type of things, then none of this really matters, right? Because it's makes it very difficult for me to walk up to you and say, "Hey, Simon, let's have a business conversation," when I know if I'm able to some way, get you to sign something, and that get you to sign something is not the approach that you want
No.
anyway. But let's say that happens, then it all falls apart, and then that's no good. That's a horrible place to be.
So I take it 360 Advance is a more consultative approach
Oh,
where
yes.
you look to understand the company's, I suppose, drivers and and key pain points before
We
you start
do.
trying to
And
sell
so,
them anything.
yes. Yeah, so we do. So we're an audit and compliance firm, right? And so, all the various frameworks, 15 years in business, 80 people on, on staff, what we call ourselves a boutique firm. But the whole, I've been here about it over a year and a half, and it's almost in the water for people to be having nuanced conversations and caring, almost to the point where it slows down business cycles, because we're not just saying, hey, fill out this scoping document and we'll send you over a quote, right? We're really trying to make sure that that folks feel like they're making a good decision. Not that there aren't deals that or things that don't work out. They certainly don't. But at the end of the day, I think we care a lot over here.
I think that makes a huge difference, and it shows. Talk to me about the main body of work you do then. So you are audit and compliance specialists. So talk
Yep.
to me about the clients that you have and the problems that you solve for those clients.
Yep. So typically we work with technology service providers. Traditionally, a lot of SaaS applications in the financial space, or in the healthcare space. Really, any company that is storing or moving around, PII or PHI or PCI, some sort of sensitive data, and they're being in a lot of ways forced from the people they're doing business with, to be compliant, right? And so they need to come to an auditor like us and become compliant. Our story is, we may not have the lowest fees, but we're not that check the box firm. We're really going to try to be as much of a partner, a trusted resource, um, and we're not entirely prescriptive, right? So we can help companies by working in those gray areas. And what folks understand at a business level is that compliance is a lot of times about the story you tell. And so, if you're able to share that story with prospective clients, that roadmap, then it's much easier for them to, be comfortable, doing business with you. And then one more point is that along with that, 15 years of being the auditor, we just started a new business, and I'm helping to build this out, but it's a managed service around compliance. So we're now sitting on the other side of the table, helping people to stand up programs and build compliance into the culture and have it sort of intersect with security, so that you don't have compliance being just like your hair's on fire exercise, like I need something. It's more of, it's just a part of the overall culture.
Well, I was talking to someone in the audience, actually, Gareth Stacey, earlier today, and he was saying that they do a lot of compliance work at the firm he works for, and he was saying he's seen a big sea change in the types of clients who are engaging with them. Going from the typically regulated firms in financial services and healthcare to now firms that aren't regulated and are actually wanting to, use it as a business enablement process as much as anything, rather than just seeing it as that tick box exercise and that pain in the arse that a lot of companies see it as.
I think that's a really good point. I think that that more and more, compliance is truly can be a component of risk management, and risk management is all happening in the C-suite. And so all organizations are concerned these days about not only managing risk, and also protecting themselves, both from a literal security standpoint, but also from a legal standpoint, right? It's very hard to show that you're not negligent when when you haven't necessarily been telling that story or building that up as a part of your business, right? And I
Yeah.
think the security folks have been dealing with compliance forever, and it's a separate discipline for sure. And I think we're seeing that more and more business minded security leaders are understanding and appreciating compliance in different ways.
And does that mean that CISOs are? I mean, I know one CISO that's a client of yours. Do you have a lot of CISOs who are clients of
we
yours?
we do. And that's because a lot of the organizations that we work with, I mean, security in general, right, has like come out of IT. And so those, and that's a growing industry in itself. And so a lot of times compliance would just get thrown to the security person, right? And so
Yeah.
it's just now that companies are building out compliance programs within their organizations. But even the smaller companies, the CISOs are still going to be have their hand or be responsible with compliance.
I'm just trying to find a website here for anyone. Where is it? Who's looking to learn about policy writing? I can't find it. Let me just go on LinkedIn. Chap in Scotland, Stuart, who's the policy wizard. He's just put together an entry level course for people
Excellent.
who want to break in. So let me just find where that is because I highly recommend it. One, he's a really, really great guy. It's pay what you can as well. So if you're not in a position to pay for this course, you can get it for free. All he asks is that when you can, or when you are in a position to, you pay it forward and
Oh,
you
that's
help someone
wonderful.
else. Yeah, I'll drop the link in here because for anyone watching who wants to get into it, policy writing isn't something that I've seen in any coursework anywhere when it comes to the security industry. And as you rightly say, um, security professionals are now embracing GRC a lot more than they were before. And I think the policy writing part of it is very, very difficult and it's quite a technical thing to learn
It
as well,
is.
isn't it?
No, it is. And then, the policies and procedures are only in some ways as useful as they are applied, right? And so that's where that what they call tone at the top, from, leadership down, compliance and security, frankly, it's important to make that again a part of the overall
And
culture
again,
of
not
the
going
organization.
back to a question actually that Richard Splodge asked. Let me move you to the
Yeah.
top so you're not cut in half. Here we go. This one here. How individual is GRC to each client? I mean, I think I know the answer to that should be very. Have there been clients that have needed a totally different approach than usual?
I I think that there are certain, depending on what framework is needed, or what certification is needed, there's going to be certain parameters. But then, it's all about defining the scope and boundaries of that particular project, and
Yeah.
everybody's organization is different to some degree. And so it's like this with a lot of these things that we deal with, right? There's a certain there's a technical component, but it's all about people and conversations and how you work together with your auditor. Otherwise, it would be that whole check the box exercise, which we're trying to prevent.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was laughing earlier because Phil dropped in policy writing's a nightmare unless you ask Chat GPT. It's funny you should mention that. I don't know if you've been playing around with Chat GPT, Carlos. Have you played around with that the last few weeks?
A little bit, but I want to dive in more. I just it's something that is I mean, it's here, man, right? I mean, there's no getting around it. It's
No.
a part of the human
I mean,
experience.
I'll be honest now. I've been running a little experiment since last Tuesday. Every single one of my posts on LinkedIn for the next 2 weeks, from last week to the end of this week, has been generated by Chat GPT. You can amend it so it learns your writing style, and it saved me so far probably about 3 hours in work, I would say,
That's
putting things
amazing.
together. And I was just waiting to see if anyone notices and pulls me up on it because I've got to be honest. I mean, I think you can tell from some of the posts and some of the material you see out there that it's been generated, but only because it's such a different style to what people normally come out with. But I
Hmm.
think the potential for it in every aspect of cybersecurity is absolutely huge. In fact, I'm launching a new show next week called the Chat GPT Experience, where
You are.
I'm going to invite different industry professionals on, and we're going to test it using different methodologies, frameworks, tools, just to see how good it is. I think it could be
That's
good.
great.
Phil mentioned that it wrote him an infosec policy in pirate speak. Arr. But you know why pirates are called pirates?
GRC, right?
Yeah, GRC. Do you know why pirates are called pirates, Phil? Because they are. That's the answer. And
I
there's
love it.
there's another lame joke as well. What's a pirate's favorite letter? Bet you know that one. Any ideas?
Let's hear it.
Okay, it be C.
I love it.
That was
That's
lame,
awesome.
wasn't it? Really lame. Right, next question. Otherwise, Simon will keep telling really, really bad jokes.
There you
Here we
go.
go. For a small business starting to deal with threats and protecting their business, is
Mm.
GRC a good way to start learning which direction to head in? Thanks, Richard.
I think about it in terms of a framework, right? So a lot of times here in the States, you might, or, someone might pick NIST, for instance, right, as a framework, and kind of build that as the backbone of, of their security program, and just do that early on and try to build a framework that maps to controls that make sense for your organization, so that when compliance is a thing, then you're already prepared, and you're not having to kind of work yourself backwards into compliance. And that's kind of what I meant earlier with preparing, right?
Yeah. Are there better frameworks for different industries then, Carlos?
Typically, like most things, refer back to, like NIST 853-53, and it's just a great starting point for lots of different things. Not everything's going to map directly, but a lot of people also use like the CIS, 20, but because those are all accessible. But when you get into, specific types of certifications or attestations like a SOC 2 or ISO, or PCI, or high trust, or any of those, then if you start early, then you have a foundation for for those type of activities, or certifications or attestations.
I was talking to a client earlier who had done the 2013 version of ISO, or they thought they had done the 2013 version of ISO, and they wanted to do a gap fill basically between that and the new one.
Yeah.
Sent a guy in there this week, and it appears that they're nowhere near even completed the first one, which I think is quite a common thing. Again, it's that lack of understanding from the business of what they've actually done. I mean, this is a big business as well, who are under the illusion they've got a third party data governance guy who comes in. They do it all properly, but none of it's been done properly. They're now miles behind where they thought they had a short gap fill to do, when really what they've got to do, going back to what you said, is going back and starting it all again to make sure it's done properly. Do you find that a lot as well?
We find a lot of first time clients that feel like they're ready, or even if they have an outsourced resource, trying to help them get ready, and they come to us, they're just not. That certainly that certainly happens for sure.
Okay, let me just send that message and bring Alana's question up before we've got a couple coming in now. Here we are. As more companies store and share data with third-party vendors, aside from manual surveys and asking data owners, are you seeing any innovative ways companies can get a better insight on compliance? That's a
Yeah,
great question.
it really it really is. One of the you know I've been in this compliance space for a little over a year and a half, and when I joined a year and a half, everyone was talking about these new platforms that were hitting the marketplace, and they were doing some automation. They were creating dashboards and these sort of things, and they're they're not the silver bullet, and technology's not. And you've talked about that on this show,
Yeah,
before, but they're getting better all the time, right? And there's, different players in the marketplace. We're developing our own platform, internally. I mean, so people are going to continue to leverage AI and technology in order to, streamline and have more visibility into compliance, like they're trying to do with other aspects of cybersecurity and their tech stack.
yeah. I think without wanting to promote other businesses on here, I think when I was speaking to Gareth Stacey earlier from Panacea, that's something that they do. They offer like a dashboard that plugs in, but I'm not sure if it plugs in across different providers. So don't hold me to that.
Promise not to.
No, thank you. Okay, right, next question. Where are we? Alana's made another comment there, which is very valid. It's no trivial undertaking to implement an ISMS.
It's
Completely
not.
agree. It's not.
No, it's not, and that's for the for the ISO work. It's a large undertaking, which is why it's probably smart to either find a way to outsource those internal audits and someone to help you build that program, or hire someone specifically for that. Because a lot of times what happens, and Simon, you talk a lot about burnout and those sort of things, right? Part of the reason people are challenged, or cybersecurity folks are challenged with compliance, is because it's like they have a day job too, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to Lindsay Thorburn. Hey, Lindsay, good to see you in here. I saw a post he did on LinkedIn earlier, which was really, really good, which talked about I think it was about working out what you wanted to do first before you start jumping in. And I think you can relate that to anything, whether it's trying to break into the industry. It's making sure that you've got an understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve and what you actually want before you start adding tools in and building stuff out, which seems to be
100%.
the problem for
Yeah, who
all of us,
said that?
isn't it? It was Lindsay Thorburn, who's in the chat. He's just put this comment up, actually. The problem with compliance frameworks is that you're compliant on the day, but the following day you start losing ground. 1 year later, you're a country mile away. I mean, I completely agree. I had governance and oversight functions with the FCA for 10, 12 years, which meant regulatory returns every 6 months, which they called the Gabriel return, which was great. You know, it gave a snapshot of the business on that day, but it
Totally.
didn't mean anything. As soon as you'd finished that, you know, the next week could be a completely different story. And I think it's the same here, isn't it?
It most certainly is, and that's, the conversation that is being had, and you see it, on LinkedIn or other places, is that, compliance isn't security. No, it's not security. It's a framework that should allow for you to have some sort of starting place for building a security program, along with showing others, especially if you're with a third party risk management component where you're having to share this with your clients, that you're compliant. Security is different. I mean, you have to be looking forward. The frameworks will never be able to keep up with the threats. I mean, they just don't. That's
No.
not how they're built, right? I mean,
No.
they're being updated a lot slower, like way slower than any type of cyber risk, right? With threat
I completely
actors and
agree.
those
And,
sort of
and
things.
as Jed has very rightly said, he believes that all we're going to be doing in cyberspace is being willing to be flexible and changing all the time. And I think that is the prerequisite, isn't it, of being in the industry.
Yeah, for sure, and that's why it's important it's important from at a business level to be thinking about security and compliance kind of separately and where they overlap. And then now, right? I mean, you're in the UK. I mean, privacy is obviously a concern as well, which kind of then ties into legal, and then there's the whole cyber insurance thing. I mean, there's so much to
I
think
had the
about and
joy of
consider.
implementing GDPR a number of years ago for a highly regulated financial services business. So that was fun.
Yeah, no, and we help people with GDPR assessments, or gap assessments and those sort of things. And so yeah, and there's all these states now that are offering or have new privacy laws. All this is going to be evolving and changing, right before our eyes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just realised there's a very serious comment in the chat that I've missed, and it's just gone off screen. Let me just find it because we've got to cover
Please.
it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'll be really upset. Here we go. KevTech put security is pizza. We secured pepperoni, and the really important part is, but not pineapple. Phil, I'm so with you. And I even saw a post the other day on LinkedIn that told me why I should have pineapple on my pizza, because of the flavor contrasts and the sweetness it brings. But no, I'm with you. Warm pineapple is for the beach, not for a pizza. What
Now,
about where are
yeah,
you with
half the
pineapple on
people just
pizzas?
drop. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah. Where are you with pineapple on pizzas, Carlos?
Man, I'm as adventurous as anything with food, man. I can't. I'm not going to turn it down. I'll be honest with you.
Okay, right. Next comment. Lindsay just replied back to what you said. Spot on, Carlos. Compliance does not equal security. Conversely, focusing on security can equal compliance, which is a
Yeah,
very, very good way of putting it.
yep. Most certainly. You have to have those technical controls in place for any of this to work, and then but again, you still are going to have to think about the policies and procedures and the overall kind of way the company's built, right? And things that maybe aren't even thought of as security measures, but things like HR and hiring policies and onboarding and offboarding policies. Those sort of things are really important.
I think the other thing that's really important, and Phil's made a point here, security can't be a blocker. It has to enable the business securely, identify the risk and offer the solution and track the acceptance. And also for an industry that is full of its own self-importance, dare I say, a little bit, we need to
That's all right.
remember that our industry is a support industry. I think that's a very
Well,
important part.
most yeah, I think there's something to that, and kind of to tie back to my experience and what we were talking about in terms of the whole art thing, is like you know, if you get, I see this happen with artists, and this is what sort of was like, okay, you can get out of art and still be super creative and live a creative life. I mean, there's plenty of people who are, quote unquote artists. Maybe they're building something, but they're really wrapped up into their identity with whatever, genre they're in or medium they're in. Like, I'm a this or I'm a that. The same thing I think can happen with security folks, right? It's
Yeah.
like my identity is wrapped up with being in security, and so security is protection, right? So if you ask me to do something that's not secure, then I'm going to say no. Well, at the end of the day, it's really that's a business decision. Maybe it's yes, maybe it's no. And the more apt that a security professional, compliance professional can speak about the business to the business, the closer they're going to get to that boardroom, if that's what they're interested in. But understanding the business for business sake is super important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Splodge has made a comment here. I'm not going to, I mean, you've made a spelling mistake here, and it sounds like you're reading this in the theme of a British TV series called Allo Allo, which was on in the 70s and 80s, but I won't reiterate that because it could come across as slightly racist. So I'll read it in a normal accent, which is what is the most, not the most, what is the most common thing you find when checking companies successively that requires working on?
It requires working on. So typically it's a combination, I would say, between technologies and processes that are in place. I think that it's probably 50-50 in that way, right? When folks really have a lot of gaps, it's typically because they do what a lot of businesses do. They build their business first and they bring security along as needed, right? Or compliance along as needed. And so they end up sort of with one of these houses where, you've built rooms onto the houses, but the plumbing doesn't reach into the other room the way that you would like it to reach into
I've
because
built
it
one like
wasn't.
that before.
Me too. That's why I use that as a metaphor. I've lived in those houses, right? Then you might really cause a fire, right?
Yeah. Well, I thought I smelt burning again a moment ago, but I can't see any smoke, so I
Just
think we're
remember,
okay.
Simon, when you smell fire, tell yourself, remember, Carlos said this. That means I'm on fire, like in the best way possible.
Is that what it is? Okay,
That's
it's
what it
not a
is. Simon's
stroke.
on
I'm
fire.
on a fire. It's absolutely fine. Okay, right. Next question. This is a random one that I'm going to pull out of nowhere on you and haven't prepped you for.
Uh,
What's the most inspiring book you've ever read?
the most inspiring book.
Doesn't have to be security related. It could be
No,
a
I
children's
wouldn't.
book or anything.
I wouldn't think so. There's when I read or listened to The Power of Now, like that was pretty powerful, especially at the time, right? I can't remember what's his name. He's written a lot of those type of books, but I remember I was in a space where I was, and you can look up Power of Now. I can't remember
I'll
his
have a look now.
Oprah is all like promoted him. I mean, he became a huge like kind of celebrity with his conversations about being present and all these things. But I
Eckhart
remember when
Tolle.
I was at this sort of transformative kind of time in my life, and this girl, this friend who I really don't stay in touch with anymore, suggested that, and it felt kind of cosmic in a way, and it was pretty powerful.
Is that about spiritual enlightenment? Is that the one with by
Yeah,
Eckhart
most
Tolle?
yeah, it is, and it's it's probably and boil it down, it's to living in the moment really, but it's pretty being in tune with the universe, all those
Do
things.
you know what? I think if you are like me and you've got ADHD, the thing that changed my life exponentially wasn't just going from millionaire to bankrupt and losing everything, which in itself was a really, really good leveler and made me take a step back and work out who I really was as a person. It was I read two books in the space of it was actually when I was studying for my CompTIA A plus,
Hmm.
and I think the reason they both resonated with me so much is because the analogy they used kind of rang true. And the first one that wasn't related to it was The Busy Person's Guide to Buddhism, which taught me how to take a step back, meditate, and clear my head of thoughts. The second one I read, which is probably a little bit homophobic and a little bit misogynistic, written in the 1960s, was a book called Psycho-Cybernetics by a guy called
Mm.
Max Maltz. And that, I think, was the precursor to most self-help books out there. And what really worked for me there, after reading the Buddhism book, And having achieved lots of amazing things in my life through mindset, and also then destroying everything through the same mindset, it really started to help me understand how the brain works on a subconscious level, from what you put in, you get out. And the analogy he used in psycho-cybernetics was that of peripherals on a computer. And so I
Hmm.
was doing my A plus, it kind of rang quite true. And he said that everything we hear during the day that goes in, that you're processing, that goes in through the peripherals, through your eyes, your ears, and all the other
Hmm.
sensory organs that we have. But where the magic happens is the processor, which switches on and does the processing when we're at periods of rest. And
Mm.
why that really resonated with me was because all the good ideas I have aren't when I'm sat at my desk trying to think of stuff. It's when I'm in the shower or when I'm laying in bed. It's when I'm at that point of rest. And I think I didn't take time to rest for probably 20 years, and spent my whole time not thinking about the present, as you rightly said a moment ago, but thinking
Yeah,
about
man.
what's next, what's next, what's next. And I think
Totally.
we're brought up to do that as well. You know, at primary
Totally.
school, we're looking forward to high school, then we're looking forward to college and getting our first car, and then we're looking for a job and getting promoted and a new car and a holiday. And it's always something next, isn't it? Where if you can just take that step back and appreciate what you've got in the moment and be aware and be present, life all of a sudden becomes a lot easier, doesn't it?
It does. And then, but having to sort of, um, you know, retrofit in it in a way, right? To like kind of go back and sort of bring it forward. That's where the real challenge is. And that's why I think someone mentioned this earlier, and is that, in today's day and age, it's a whole lot easier to talk about those things more than ever. And talking about those things is crucial to healing and moving forward and being reconnected and those sort of things. And to tie it back to, I mean, really your topic, your show, not necessarily this topic, but folks in cybersecurity, especially people that are in front of technology all day, man, they can really wear themselves out, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just looking in the comments. Lindsay Thorburn's jumped in here. I was late to the party tonight. I appreciate you tuning in, whether it's late or on time, Lindsay. I was late because he was delving into something related to the comment about understanding the business, and then came back into here, delving into NIST 8286D business impact analysis, which brings assets, their dependencies, their part in the processing of information. It really is a staple read for any GRC analyst. So there we go. We've got
Excellent.
a book recommendation there. Thank you very much, Lindsay.
No,
Much appreciated.
beautiful. And Simon, like, one of the coolest things that I've discovered, and I think you've discovered as well, is that the community is so open and giving, right? There's this certain amount of kind of sort of solidarity within the cybersecurity community that is kind of, it's definitely endearing, and I think it's unique in some ways. I mean,
It is.
sometimes I feel like I can't put my finger on it, but I can certainly feel it.
It's there's not an industry like it. I mean, I spent
Is that
25
true,
years in.
Simon?
I think so. I mean, I've got experience from lots of different industries, but predominantly financial services, which is quite a self-centered, self-driven industry to be in, where there's not really anyone giving back and helping out. But I've been absolutely blown away by this industry, by the amount of people. I mean, look at the CISO experience that
Yeah.
came out of nowhere. And I wasn't, sales pitching people to get them on there. I was sending them a message saying, "Would you like to be a guest on the show?" We've now had over 40 with some of the biggest enterprise level CISOs in the US and the UK.
Yeah,
And
man.
it's not because I'm paying them. It's because they're genuinely willing to give back and try and help those who are, either aspiring to be CISOs or aspiring to break in. And I can't see that happening with stockbrokers. Can you?
No, it won't. It won't. It's not happening.
Definitely not. There's a. I don't know if you can help with this question here.
Let's hit it. Let's hear it.
Phil said, "Can you recommend any resources to get a better understanding of building and running an internal security audit?"
Any resources? If you, I have a couple of resources that I might be able to point you to. If you want to, ping me on LinkedIn and message me, I can send you a couple of,
Excellent. Let
things
me
that,
get
that I
your
see
LinkedIn
that I have.
profile up.
Yeah, please do that. Everyone, please connect. Like, I'm really getting into hanging out and having short conversations with people that want to chat about the industry and whatnot. So I'm open to it. Yeah, Phil, I'll do what I can to point you in the right direction. But I'm telling you, find people smarter than me. because they're out there and they really are giving.
I know, I know that feeling, Carlos. I'm never the smartest person in the room, and nor would I want to be. So it's quite fortunate, really, when you've got an IQ as low as I have. But
Listen, Simon, we're going to be on that same bus together, but
I know we are. It's the happy bus. It's
it
all
is the
right.
happy bus. But it's being about being a connector, right? And that's
Yes, it
important
is.
part of all this. But yeah, Phil, ping me if you would like. I'll do what I can. But seriously, um, follow people on LinkedIn, and not only follow people, but comment on their stuff, right? Like if I was in a non-sales role and I wanted to, get somewhere in cybersecurity, I would do the exact same thing I'm doing now. It's just I would maybe have different conversations. I would find 10 or 20 leaders in the industry, and I would bookmark their profile and I'd put their bell on, and every time they commented I would comment, and I would try to not necessarily try to say something smart, but don't just say that's cool, right? Like have a thought. People love that.
Yeah, they do. Gregor says, thanks, Phil. Just bought the audiobook for the tip that you dropped in there. Kean says that buses make him travel sick. I used to swim competitively in my youth, and all joking aside about buses, I spent every weekend on a bus going to
I bet
different
you did.
events, and I hate buses too. So I'm with you on that, Kean. And here we go. Gareth's got a good comment. You know what they say, though? If you're in the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. And I completely agree.
Yep, me
Here we
too.
go. Right, last question from the chat. Stephen, good to see you, Stephen. He's unsure if this was asked prior from him scrolling up, but what is a good way to get a first look into GRC from no experience?
For you get into
This comes from a
GRC.
very technical, hands-on person as well, knowing
Yeah.
Stephen.
Oh, okay. So I think what is the best way to get into to GRC? Truthfully, I think that you know the external audit, if you have any sort of desire or experience and are willing to work your way up, I mean, like a firm like ours is perfect for this. And there are these boutique smaller firms. Just start having conversations with people and see if you can carry some buckets of water, right? And kind of try to build your way in, because there's a huge need for folks. And if you look at the external auditors, I mean, they're going to need more and more people. It'd probably be a little more challenging to get into like an internal audit team with a big company, but I would go external audit and just try to network with people and connect.
Yeah, it makes sense. And if you're looking for resources, KevTech typed it just as I was looking for the link. Jerry Ozier, Dr. Gerald Ozier, should I say, has got a GRC masterclass that
Excellent.
again is pay what you can. It's an amazing course. I've done it
Yep,
myself. Really, really good. The link is in the comments there. And Alana's
that's great.
agreed. GRC masterclass is a great resource, and that's from someone working in GRC as well. So that's amazing. I did put the TCM security link in. It is available on Simply Cyber, and I think it's available through ThreatGen. So I'm not, pointing you in the direction of that. It's the first one that came up on Google. So,
Thank you,
okay.
Google.
Last question then. It's going to be a good one. What shall I ask you last? Nice awkward question for Carlos to finish off. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Carlos? What's the plan?
5 years. Oh
Yeah,
my God. See, I'm living in the moment. I don't know. Let me see.
I'm with you.
Um, I'm just messing around. Where do I see myself in 5 years? So I'll tell you what I like to do and what I'm interested in, and wherever this takes me, we'll see. Like I'm interested, like truly am into building things from scratch, right? So things that like where there's nothing, like help try to make it exist. And there seems to be plenty of opportunity in cybersecurity to do that. And so if those are I think those are the two boxes. I think it'll continue down the cybersecurity route, but I think I'll have more and more opportunities, to build within the medium of business,
Yeah.
and however that looks, I'm not completely sure, but that'll be that, and then continuing to try to find a way to ramp up to ramp down, right? I don't want to be grinding forever either. So I think all of that is in consideration too. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be on a beach. Maybe I said forget it all.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, everyone's idea of success is completely different. My answer to where will I be in 5 years is I'd like to be in exactly the same place I am now, which is happy and content every day. because I haven't always been happy and content. I think that is all down to me. Back to the mindset thing. It doesn't matter what external factors. I mean, I've had a very challenging, very tough year on the personal front. I've got a mother at end of life at the moment. We've
Yep.
had lots of stuff on, but I still wake up every day happy and positive and very thankful for what I do have. And I think if we can all continue being thankful and appreciative for what we've got, rather than chasing the next shiny thing or the next job or the next whatever it is, life's a much happier place from my point of view, Carlos. And whilst I said that was the last question, Phil has really pulled it out of the bag here.
Go, Phil.
I'll get to it in a minute because, Kev, I have ignored your comment that came in earlier. Simon will be more happy with New York pizza. I am coming to the US and it is going to be soon. We'll touch on that at the end of this, but it's not New York yet. So I'm hoping it's New York this summer, Kev, and I'm definitely buying you a pizza, and yours has got pineapple on it. But the comment that the question that Phil came out with, if you were stuck in an elevator, which 3 other people would you want to be stuck with? And it can't be an elevator repair person.
Sure.
That's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is. That's always tricky for a guy like me. I'm not a what do you call it? Like a trivia person. Like people who know trivia, like they can come up with those things, really, really quickly. I think, oh man, I think it would be.
I'll answer it quickly from my point of view.
Yeah, you do it, Simon. You take it.
Well, you have a think about the answer. The first one would be me 10 years ago, so I could give myself a slap and
Love
save
it.
myself a few years of pain. The other one would be my late grandmother, because I miss her a lot and she brought me up when I was little. And the third one would just have to be someone funny who'd make me laugh. So it could be any comedian, probably, because if
I
I'm
like
stuck in
it.
an elevator, laughter's key, isn't it?
No, that's excellent. So I kind of somehow, I don't know, came up with 3 names, and because I think this would be an interesting party, or an interesting set of circumstances. So first of all, I found a couple rock biographies that I really liked, and by the way, there's not as many rock biographies that are truthful as you would find. They don't want to tell their story, but Bruce Springsteen had a beautiful one, and then I also read a Tom Petty one, which was not a biography, but it was written or read by someone really close to him. And then I would throw like Oprah Winfrey in there. I think if that would be a great time, and I think we'd just have some really great conversations.
I love that. I love that. I really, really do. KevTech said easy for him would be Mike Miller and ask him about his socks. Second person is Simon, give me decaf coffee, and third person is Michael for the Navy. Love that. But
Nice.
no, good list, Carlos, as well. Okay, let's just before we wrap things up. Whilst nothing's confirmed yet, I'm going to mention something now because there's a potential that we're going to be doing something together in a couple
Please.
of months' time. So I'm going to bring that up. But before I do, I'll just put the captions up at the bottom. For those that aren't aware, we have got an InfoSec Live United Kingdom and US tour kicking off in 24 days' time at the Old Technology Museum in Cambridge here in the United Kingdom. Kindly sponsored by Cyberscale and supported by Cyber East, which is a government foundation aimed at helping businesses with their cybersecurity. We are having a very laid back, very relaxed pizza and beer, decaf coffee for me, evening of networking and knowledge sharing with a bit of instant response thrown in because that's what the CISOs have asked for. The idea is we're going to take this all around the UK this year. So we've got Manchester, Cardiff, Leeds, London, Newcastle, and Edinburgh lined up. And from the US point of view, it's looking like, Carlos, at the moment, that the first one is going to be on March the 31st in sunny Tampa Bay with
Let's go.
yourself and the team at 360, which would be awesome. We're talking to another couple of sponsors at the moment and the amazing CISO who you actually do some work for. He's
Yes.
involved in the organizing of that. But if there's anyone out there who'd like me to bring it to a different venue in the US, I'm thinking about San Francisco, going to do an evening event at the same time as RSA. New York, I'm looking for the summer. Washington, I'm looking for the summer. And Texas, I think Austin and perhaps Dallas later on in the year as well. But if anyone's interested in finding out more or finding out about sponsorship opportunities or where the events are, please let me know. Happy to send you a link for the ones that have been organised. But before we go, yeah, DC it is, Alana. I've got the Cyberbytes Foundation. My friend Amanda Savitz is the Director for Strategy and Innovation there. She's offered me that venue. So now it's just a case of I need a local DC person to tell me what date's going to be good in the summer and I'll get something booked in. But before we go, Carlos, anything from you? Final words for everyone?
Man, I think don't be afraid to build things. Don't be afraid to, step out there when you don't understand things 100%. And the LinkedIn community is such a big opportunity for us in the cyberspace to connect. So connect with me and let's just keep the conversation going.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carlos. I have dropped Carlos's LinkedIn profile and my own in the chat if anyone wants to check that out. I'm now
Yep.
going to go and make myself another decaf coffee and have a quick vape before I go to bed. Carlos, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been
You got
absolutely
it.
amazing. Everyone, again, thank you very much for tuning in. Alana, Mike Miller jumping in at the end. Great to see you. Mike Miller's actually a guest. I believe it's this Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. We're back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. my time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, with Mark Turallo, who's an author who's written a very exciting book that I can't remember what it's called. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And I'm off to Manchester for the Future of Cybersecurity conference with Jay Tilson, Greg Vandergast, and some other industry legends here in the UK, out for a meal on Thursday. So if anyone's in Manchester and they fancy it Thursday night, come and see us. Carlos, thank you. See you all
My
soon.
pleasure, my man. We'll catch you soon. See you,
Take
everyone.
care. Bye all.